In November of 2019, a woman received a surprise phone call from the police asking if she knew where her son was. The woman was shocked but told them that she had no idea. She assumed her son had gotten himself into trouble with the law until police informed her that his burnt-out vehicle was found in an area he had no connection to, and he was nowhere to be found. No one has heard from him since, and any inquiries into what may have happened to the young man have only led to more questions than answers. This is the bizarre case of Marshal Iwaasa. Marshal Iwaasa was born on January 3, 1993 in Lethbridge, Alberta, which is in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. It was an ideal spot for Marshal and his older sister Paige to be raised by their mother Tammy. Growing up, Marshal was quiet and introverted, so the serenity of the outdoors in this area matched his personality perfectly. After finishing school, Marshal developed a keen interest in bodybuilding and began dedicating much of his spare time to it. When he wasn't at the gym, Marshal worked at a grocery store and took on various manual labor jobs. As soon as he earned enough money from these jobs to support himself, he moved out of his mom's home and into a flat with some friends. In 2018, after working for several years, Marshal decided it was time for him to further his education. He would choose to enroll in an IT program for software development at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. The university was located in Calgary, which would mean yet another move, but Marshal was looking forward to the new experience. Unfortunately, by the summer of 2019, Marshal realized school wasn't working out for him. Unbeknownst to his mother and sister at the time, he had actually decided not to return to school for the fall semester. Although this was certainly a turbulent period of his life, there was no indication that anything was wrong, which is why his sudden disappearance in November of that year came as such a shock. In the evening of Sunday the 17th of November 2019, Marshal embarked on the 2-hour journey back to his mother Tammy's house in Lethbridge to help her with some computer problems she was having. Shortly after arriving, he quickly got to work on Tammy's computer, and by 11 p.m. that night, he had managed to resolve the issue. At this point, Marshal informed his mother that he would be heading to the nearby storage facility to grab something before returning to Calgary. Marshal shared a storage unit with his sister Paige, where they both kept various items that they didn't want to throw away. Tammy insisted that Marshal just spend the night and then visit the storage unit the following morning before returning to Calgary, but he was adamant on going that night. Little did Tammy know, however, this would be the last time she would ever see her son. On the 23rd of November, 6 days after visiting his mother back in Lethbridge, Marshal's badly burned out 2009 GMC Sierra truck was found on a treacherous trailhead at Felix Creek in Pemberton, British Columbia. Strangely enough, this area is more than 1,200 kilometers away from Lethbridge, and Marshal did not have any known connections to anyone or anything there. It was more than a 14-hour drive away from his mother's house and an 11-hour drive from his place in Calgary in the other direction. This was a bizarre discovery, to say the least, because that area was extremely remote and there was no logical reason his vehicle would have wound up there. The hikers who found the vehicle quickly reported it to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The area was so remote, it took police 2 days to get there, having even damaged one of their vehicles during the initial attempts to reach the area. On November 26th, after confirming who the vehicle belonged to, police contacted Marshal's mother and sister, who were in Hawaii at the time. They quickly found out that no one had heard from Marshal since he was last seen at his mother's house, at which point it was discovered that he was missing. In order to understand the evidence in this case, we have to go back to the night of November the 17th, when Marshal left his mother's house to go to the storage locker. Marshal arrived at the storage facility at around 11:30 p.m. This is known because when he arrived, he entered the personal access code, which should have unlocked the gate so he could drive in. The facility provided all occupiers with a unique code which identified them as soon as it was entered into the keypad. Except that night, Marshal's code didn't work. The logger recorded Marshal attempting to enter the access code dozens of times, all to no avail. What Marshal didn't know was that the storage facility was completely locked from 11 p.m. When he and his sister had first rented the unit 6 years earlier, it was a 24-hour facility, but this had changed sometime after, unbeknownst to Marshal. It would not open until 6 a.m. the following morning. The number of times Marshal had input his code seemed to suggest that he was frantically trying to enter the facility. This stood out as a bit bizarre to many, however, because no one could figure out what he would have needed so urgently from within his storage locker. According to his sister Paige, the locker was just filled with miscellaneous items that they couldn't keep but didn't want to throw away, such as books, camping equipment, and Christmas ornaments. Furthermore, when the storage locker was later investigated, Paige confirmed that nothing was missing that she knew of. As such, some have speculated that he may have been storing something there that she wasn't aware of. The following morning, the key logger showed that Marshall had finally gained access to the storage facility just after 6 a.m. What's strange, however, is the fact that, according to records, Marshall had stayed in the facility for over 2 hours. To leave the facility, one's code had to be input again, and the log showed that the next time Marshall input his code was at 8:30 a.m. It's completely unknown why Marshall remained inside the facility and what he was doing between 6 and 8:30 a.m. The security cameras inside were set to erase after 24 hours, so by the time police got there, the footage had been erased and there was no way to verify what he was doing. It's perplexing, however, that Marshall remained in the facility for so long because his storage unit was rather small and he knew where everything was. There was nothing that could have taken him so long to find, leading some to speculate that he had an ulterior motive for being there, although it's unknown what that may have been. Furthermore, what did Marshall do while waiting for the storage facility to open between 11:30 p.m. on the 17th and 6 a.m. on the 18th? Why would he not have just returned back to his mother's place if he knew he had to wait until the following morning to access his storage unit? Even more bizarre, however, is the fact that his truck was not seen on any security cameras in the area after 8:30 a.m., as if he had just vanished right after leaving the storage facility. This was the last known location of Marshal Iwaasa to this day. No one realized Marshall was missing until his abandoned, burned-out truck was found. The discovery of his truck was completely coincidental. Felix Creek, where it was discovered, sits on the shores of Long Lake in British Columbia, and the only nearby dwelling is the Brian Waddington Hut. This is a small hut where hikers can set up camp while they stay in Felix Creek. James Stark, one of the hikers who discovered the vehicle, happened to be renting out the Brian Waddington Hut that week. He and his crew stumbled upon the truck while driving along the remote trailhead on Felix Creek that eventually led to the hut. Had they not been driving there that week, it would have taken far longer for the vehicle to be discovered. When James found the vehicle, he immediately took multiple pictures. He later made a Facebook post in which he mentioned that it felt like a crime scene and had an eerie feeling, so much so that he and his crew decided not to continue forward to the hut. He alerted authorities as soon as his cell reception returned on the way back. What the hikers found at the scene, however, was bizarre to say the least. Around the truck, they discovered a smashed Xbox, as well as PlayStation, multiple passports, 3 smashed phones, a broken laptop, and piles of clothing, among other things. Most of these items did not even belong to Marshall. When his room in Calgary was later investigated by his sister, it was discovered that his Xbox and PlayStation were still there, meaning the consoles found at the scene weren't his. But this begs the question: where did these items come from? The Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived at the scene on the 25th of November, and Marshall's family was contacted on the 26th. His mother assumed he had made it back to Calgary, and his sister assumed he was busy with schoolwork, as he was not replying to her text. At the time, the two didn't know that he had not returned to school for the semester, as he had never told them. They were surprised to hear that his burned-out truck had been found in the Felix Creek area, hundreds of miles from where they had last known him to be. His mother and sister thought the discovery was strange, but figured that the truck must have been stolen and abandoned. It just didn't make sense for Marshall to go there. He was at university in Calgary, and he had no connection to the area. After receiving no answer on Marshall's phone, they called all their friends and family in Lethbridge to ask if anyone had seen him. But to their utter dismay, no one had seen or heard from him. He was reported missing that day. His mother and sister jumped into action, doing anything they could think of to find Marshall. Unfortunately, since the surveillance footage from the storage facility had been overwritten and nobody they knew had any contact with Marshall, they had very little to go on. His sister established the Find Marshal Iwaasa Facebook page, which quickly gained a lot of attention, but nothing useful came of it. To this day, no CCTV footage of Marshall or his truck has been found. This begs the question, did Marshall drive his car to Felix Creek, or did someone else? The truck would have needed to refuel multiple times between Lethbridge and where it was found, so why is there no CCTV footage from a gas station on any of the routes showing the vehicle? Marshall's financial records showed no activity since he went missing, so who paid for the gas on the way? There were several other oddities in this case, including the pictures that the hiker took at the scene on the day he and his crew discovered Marshall's truck. When compared to the pictures that the Canadian police took only 2 days later, it was clear that various items were missing, and others were in different positions than they originally were. This suggests that somebody was in the area and had tampered with the scene. With the area being so remote and not frequently traveled, however, one has to wonder who could have done such a thing. Did somebody happen to stumble across the scene and take some items, or did the person or people responsible for burning the vehicle return, for whatever reason? Unfortunately, these are questions we may never have the answers to. Following the discovery of the vehicle, it took until May of 2020 for cadaver dogs to be taken to the site where Marshall's truck was found due to weather conditions and the treacherous terrain they were faced with. Marshall's family also hired numerous private investigators to assist them in finding him. They did not discover anything new, but another, more intensive search was carried out in June of the same year, which involved personnel from search and rescue, a helicopter, and search dogs. Again, no sign of Marshall was found. Marshal Iwaasa has never been seen or heard from again since the 17th of November 2019. When looking into his case, however, many discovered there was a bizarre string of similar disappearances near the area where Marshal Iwaasa's truck was found. On the 26th of November 2019, 3 days after hikers found Marshall's burnout truck, Daniel Roche's car was reported as an abandoned vehicle. The 2004 Honda Civic was found in the Squamish area, which is just a few kilometers from where Marshall's truck was discovered. The car was found running, with the driver's door wide open, but no one inside. Daniel was last seen at 1 a.m. that day on the back deck of a family member's property. For unknown reasons, he walked from the deck into the woods surrounding the home, and he has never been seen or heard from again. Luke Neville disappeared in October 2017. He was last seen in Spence's Bridge, BC, about 140 kilometers from where Marshall's car was found. The next day, his burned-out Ford E350 van was found on a service road 20 kilometers away. He has not been seen or heard from since. In August of 2019, the bodies of Ryan Provencher and Ben Skur were found after having gone missing the month prior, just south of where Luke Neville lived. Their abandoned Jeep Cherokee was found 4 days after they were last seen alive on July 17th. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police has said there was criminal behavior associated with the case, but did not elaborate further. In January 2019, Ben Tyner went missing near a city called Merritt in BC while he was herding cattle on horseback. 2 days later, his fully saddled horse was found wandering on a service road. Nearly 40 search and rescue members went to look for him in the surrounding area, but found nothing. This case was especially bizarre because it's very unusual for a seasoned cowboy to be separated from his horse. Finally, there's 20-year-old Ryan Stuka. He disappeared in February of 2018 after leaving a house party near Kamloops, just east of where Marshall's truck was found. Like in the case of Ben Tyner, the area from which he vanished was searched extensively, but nothing was ever discovered. Officials involved in the disappearances and deaths of these men continue to state that they are unrelated to each other. One even went so far as to say the area is just popular for abandoning vehicles due to its remoteness. Others, however, including some of the missing men's family members, speculate that the cases have to be at least in some way connected, as they believe the similarities cannot be coincidence. They all vanished under mysterious circumstances within a few hundred kilometers of each other. On top of this, many of the missing men's abandoned or even burned out cars were found some distance away from where they were last seen. During a news interview, Luke Neville's brother, Mark Neville, even stated, quote, "I keep hoping every day that the police would call and say we're starting to connect all the dots. But no, I haven't heard anything from the police about if there's any commonality between the cases. But I feel that there is. That's just my gut," end quote. There are still many unanswered questions regarding the disappearance of Marshal Iwaasa. What did he need so urgently from his storage unit? What did he do in the time waiting for the facility to reopen? And why did he spend over 2 hours there once it did? How did his vehicle end up so far away from where he was last seen? And why are there so many items that didn't belong to Marshal around it? And finally, was his disappearance somehow connected to the other disappearances in the area? While we may never get the answers to these questions, we can only hope that one day the family and friends of Marshal Iwaasa will have closure.